Yeah. So as promised, we have launched a website on TPP.
Yay.
So I don't know if you have seen it. Have you seen it?
Yep.
I don't know what the URL is, so if you could give it to us.
tppthedate.org.
Have you been sending out sort of stuff from it? You know,
I sent newsletters.
various
Yeah.
sort of opinions or
Yeah. So this is the website, and it's a crowdsourced platform for anyone to say what you think about the TPP. So if you oppose TPP, you can say why you oppose it. If you are pro TPP, you can say why you're pro. So what we're actually trying to do is to gather opinions from everyone. tppthedate.org. So we're trying to gather opinions from everyone. So here you have what people are saying about TPP. It's red, that means that they're against it. You have a lot of opinions. And then we have a lot of content concerning the TPP from all over the internet. So the idea is that if you want to find out what's going on with the TPP, you can find out here. And then you can actually say, I oppose this or I support this thing. And hopefully, if we have enough opinions from people, we can take this information to the MPs when they do the voting. Actually, we have contacted them already. I have contacted 39 MPs. So basically, this website is a way for you to be heard. If you want to tell the MPs what you think about the TPP, come to the website, and in this space, you can actually say what you think about the TPP. If you want to see what people are actually saying about the TPP, you can check here. One pro, for neutral, 9 against. So we are trying to collect numbers, and then hopefully the numbers, the MPs will say, okay, well, people wanted because of this, and they wanted because of that. Okay, so that is the idea. So yeah, that is my announcement.
One other small announcement is that on the 23rd, if you happen to be anti-TPP, there's a rally. So
Yay.
the information is on my Facebook.
Did you go for the one last Saturday? Did you shout at that?
Yeah, but it was more for information than actual.
No, there were quite a many people.
Yeah.
I wanted to go. I couldn't go.
Yeah. So without further delay, we start with the film. Please go check the website tppthedate.org, and we depend on word of mouth. So please tell your friends, post it on Facebook and all that stuff. Because we're trying to get people to actually, participate. So now with the film is 1 hour 30 minutes. There's a toilet in the back if you need to go.
A keystone species is any species in an ecosystem whose population and behavior affects every other species. that's certainly what we are as a species right now.
If you look at the foundation of our current system, you know, it's based on a flawed understanding of nature. And a lot of our political ideologies and economic system, it's all based on this understanding that we're separate from natural systems.
We've seen enough examples, you know, in different civilizations and societies that have existed, you know, throughout history. Invariably we find that the reason why they no longer exist is because they undermine their resource base.
The word agriculture comes from agrarian. Culture, agrarian means the soil. Culture means the enrichment of it. Agriculture, that is destruction, a depletion, an extraction of soil. It's an extractive process, closer to mining.
All the agricultural soil where our food is coming from is losing around 2 millimeters topsoil per acre per year, every single year, and it really can't continue.
So as we look at the present modern world that we live in, it's largely an industrial economy. And this idea of centralization, mass production, long distance transportation goes completely against how it is that evolution has actually done what it's done so beautifully and ingeniously on the earth. And what we're looking towards is this question of adaptation. How can we as a species really adapt to how the earth works?
In order for us to design an agriculture or a culture that is ecological, then we have to look to our local models, and that's the forest. That is our teacher.
An ecosystem generally doesn't require lots of energy input from the outside from another ecosystem. It's finding a way to work with the sun and all the natural cycles throughout the seasons to produce what it needs.
Nature's the best thing we got. Like, pointing to something else is best. But there's nothing else. We don't have anything else. And it hasn't only survived. It's thrived. It's found ways to adapt to new conditions.
Let's now design ecosystems that ecologically sound, economically productive, and it's permanent agriculture.
Permaculture is not a thing, it's a way of thinking. It's a process of design. And the word permaculture comes from permanent and agriculture. And it's putting those two things together and asking the question, can we create a permanent agriculture? Not permanent in the sense of concrete, but permanent in the sense that it is built upon and grounded in the resilient diversity of how ecosystems work. And it's also a permanent culture, in the sense that can culture become something that is grounded in the real resilience of biology?
And we can really look at permaculture design as a whole way of seeing the world, looking at problems and seeing how they can turn into solutions.
Permaculture is a design process that's applicable in any landscape for any set of objectives.
You know, permaculture is dependent on the prospects for us doing good, not us just doing less bad. And that really has been the driver of a lot of the modern environmental movement, is people doing less bad, let's just do less damage. The eco, lower our footprint.
And concepts like this create a very dangerous self-image, because it's a self-image that's based on the notion that we're inherently bad. We're inherently a scourge on the face of the planet.
I want to have as small an impact as possible. Ultimately, it'd be better if you didn't live with that approach, right? That's where you go with that philosophy. Well, I don't want to be dead, I want to live, and I want the lives around me to live better as well because I have lived. So all of a sudden you can start doing good, and then impact is a great thing. Footprint is something we want to leave. We're a piece of land that's representative of what most of land is in the United States and increasingly the world. So eat up old hill farm. So it's degraded land. We're not an agricultural land. So the strategies we're working with are specifically to respond to these conditions, how to restore health to degraded land, and to do so in a way in which you're gleaning valuable yields. We see the time we're in today as a period where we need new tools and new strategies, new techniques for land repair that are adaptive in our more rapidly changing world.
We check them once every few days to a week, look at their hooves, make sure they're healthy. It wasn't until after we got sheep that I realized that the site, that the biomass, biological material that the site was producing was mostly oxidizing. It wasn't being cycled back into soil directly. And that doesn't really build soil very quickly. This material falls down and it decays in the sunlight and oxidizes, and it doesn't turn into soil directly. And when this material goes in the mouth of a grazing animal and out through the backside, it comes out as fantastic, pure soil and moves right back into the soil food web system. All of a sudden, when we got grazing animals, the lushness of the site and the vitality of it just started to go straight up. And we saw more richness in what the soil could do on the site in a season of grazing than we had in 6 years before. So we're always adding organic matter, feeding the soil from the top, and also feeding from the bottom with roots, because that's carbon that was in the atmosphere, these roots, now in the soil. That's carbon going from the atmosphere into the soil. That's the reverse of a smokestack. It's the opposite of a factory. And plants are the opposite of a factory, right? Reverse carbon conveyor belt.
Oh, I'm stepping on you so many. Wow.
It's neat to see the value of perennials in the ecosystem as far as food producers. You know, perennials, plants that don't have to be planted every year, they're constantly growing, constantly establishing themselves, keeping their root systems growing bigger every year and more productive every year versus an annual that we always have to plant.
Sea berries have a nutraceutical quality berry that's loaded with essential fatty acids, vitamin E, vitamin C, many forms of anti-cancer compounds. It's really a citrus of the north, but it's much more nutrient dense than any citrus. And it's a nitrogen-fixing fruit,
one of the only that we can grow. So it's actually putting more nitrogen into the soil than it takes, putting more fertility back in the soil than it extracts, while giving us a very high quality yield of food and medicine. The plants that are most medicinal for the land also tend to be the most medicinal for the human body, which probably isn't a coincidence. We're all co-evolved with plants for tens and hundreds of thousands of years. So here we are in the Seabury swale zone, and this is our growing medium here. If you look at the material we're on, if you just pull back the 1 inch of subsoil and roots, you see what we're on here. This is bedrock, right? We're on 0 to 1 to 12 inches of subsoil on the earth itself, the mantle, right? Schist, Green Mountain bedrock. Terrible land, the opposite of Adamant. And we've turned what was the least productive area of property into now the most productive. This southwest facing slope was in perpetual drought, and I didn't realize that until we actually dug these swales. Swales is where you cut out of the slope on a line of equal elevation across the slope, not up and down, horizontally across the slope. You take that material and you put it downhill. And so all you do is create this long channel where the water has to stop when it's flowing downhill and spread out and infiltrate. And so all of a sudden the water has to go into the soil. And it's not just moving across the surface, it's going into the soil horizon and then percolating through the soil, past the roots of plants.
There's so much more food and soil building here. This is the kind of biological actions happening here. So I've got tillage radish, purple top turnips, clover. There's so much food for people and animals here. There's more food for grazing animals on this swale than there is in the existing field that was here, and probably more nutrition here than there is in this entire field. And we didn't add anything, we just changed the structure. The only input's the growing machine. We didn't put lime or fertilizer or anything like that in. Just structural adjustments, land growth, land chiropractic. Good, maybe we got some potatoes actually. The rice comes right out of the stalk. So all of these, that's really cool. You see how it's inside that? The rice. It's coming out of the grass. In parts of Southeast Asia, they've managed to figure out how to grow grain for not just hundreds, but thousands of years in the same piece of land. In these things called paddies, even on hilly landscapes, without losing their soil, without losing the constant battle to erosion and gravity, which is soil loss and nutrient loss. Because the paddy changes everything. All of a sudden you have an depression in the landscape, and you have a system that's catching everything rather than always losing your nutrients. Everything we're doing here, we're realizing, is an attempt to actually farm the water first and the soil second. Now, water droplets that used to have to travel about 1,500 feet from the top of the property to the bottom have to travel about a mile through swales and paddies and ponds, and most of that water never even leaves the site. It's infiltrated and recharges the groundwater, or it goes right into the plants and is evaporated back up into the hydrological system to fall as rain somewhere else. There's a fossil fuel input there to create these land shapes, which I resisted early on, and I wanted to do everything in my hand. But then I realized
This energy is only going to be cheap and super available potentially for a short window in human history. We have those resources today, and they're being burned up for flavor uses every day. So now my approach is one of like oil intervention, oil to soil, oil to intergenerational infrastructure. When we get done with earthworking an area of the land, heavy equipment never goes back there. It's done. That land is structurally adjusted to be more robust for the next 5,000 to 10,000 years until the ice comes back again, and be more resilient in the face of drought or flood, and more productive every year thereafter with a little bit of earth shaking. We're not just creating rows of corn or beans that's just for us. You think about a cultivated tilled field, that's just for human beings. Everything else needs to basically be killed to get that crop, you know, that 1,000-acre cornfield. We're creating a multi-story ecosystem with mushrooms and berries and fruits and nuts and grazing animals and vegetables all interwoven. This idea of permaculture. We can actually be healing forces.
Found a place that was just as beat up as it could possibly be. The house was brand new, but the yard was just a wreck. Most of it was filled, and didn't even have vegetation on it or anything. We could have gotten a farm and stuff, but we wanted to show what could be done on this scale because so many people have yards this size, and we wanted to show that even with terrible soil, lots of shade, you could produce a huge amount of food. We spent a year learning the site, watching it in every season, learning the pattern of light and shadow and rainfall and snow and wind, and came up with a pattern that harmonizes to the best of our ability our goals with the needs and opportunities the site presents. Basically, we wanted a double handful of fruit every day from late May through November. We wanted edible greens every day of the year. We wanted to build organic matter and to put some vegetation in here and make some habitat to bring life back, to bring animal life and soil life and fungal life back to the site. And we're trying to do it in a way that functions as a real ecosystem. But we've tried to find this garden that's the best of both worlds, where you've got native plants and habitat plants, many of which are edible. You've got food plants, many of which provide habitat, all working together to try and bring this ecosystem, this novel design ecosystem to life, and it's mostly perennial. We're experimenting with perennial beans and perennial chickpeas and all kinds of stuff. So we grow 70 kinds of perennial greens and another 46 species of fruit.
These are pawpaws, and it's a delicious fruit. It's related to cherimoya and soursop and guanabana and all that good stuff. And it's native here, which is really important to us. We feel like we always want to start looking at the native plants of our area and building out. Pawpaws are like creamy and custardy and wonderful.
I'm not a spiritual guy, but I would say there's a spiritual enrichment that happens when you make that transformation, when you regenerate a site, and that's why we talk about permaculture being regenerative design. Sustainability is just about keeping things as they are, not letting it get any worse. Regenerative is about making things better, and that's really very promising and very inviting.
You know, in a setting like this, which some might classify as suburban, I think it's pretty important to not focus on the negative aspects that suburbia has come to engender over the years. We have an enormous opportunity to take the neighborhoods we have and turn them into the villages we're going to need to navigate through the future. So whether you think of stringing a bunch of lawns together for food production, or all of the routes that could be capturing energy and rainwater, or just the geographic proximity of people and families to be able to team up together and make positive things happen. Just want to welcome all of you and thank you for coming to this permablitz. The idea being that we all pitch in together and we get an enormous amount of work done in one day toward turning a permaculture design into reality. You know, doom and gloom and ultimatums of catastrophe are not necessarily the most compelling messages. I mean, it's true that we need to be concerned about what's happening in the world and not hide from those realities. But at the same time, hold in our hearts this amazing vision of what's possible. What could it be like if humans could help make this place sing with life?
So I'm really interested in taking the scope of permaculture and taking it really wide and looking at how does a whole region or whole community adapt this kind of systemic design lens and thinking. Pedal People was started 10 years ago. It's a worker co-op that uses bicycles and bike trailers to haul things. Somewhere along the line, somebody said, wow, a diesel truck, that's a great way we can pack a lot of trash on that. But when we look at the effect on our roads, and we look at really the terrible effect that diesel fumes have on our communities, bicycles just are awesome. The whole business is really based on the principle that there's no such thing as waste. And Pedal People actually takes that waste and takes compost, literally. We started this in our pilot project and uses that to build healthy soil. Taking out of the waste stream all the wonderful organic materials that are just going to the landfill and contributing to methane gas, but actually using that, pulling it out and building healthy soil.
We moved to this house about 11 years ago in Cleveland, New Hampshire, and it's an 1890s house, and it's on a half an acre. And we did that with a lot of intention. As much as we would have liked to started clean and be able to build exactly what we wanted in a way that we wanted, one of our thoughts was that so much of the housing stock that's needed is already been built, and all the energy has been put into all these houses all across the nation. So could we take a house in a town that we really want to be in and start to retrofit it and actually embody permaculture? For us, the whole intent of putting a composting toilet in the house was part of trying to close the cycles of nutrients and energy as they flow on the property. And we realized we had a huge disconnect where we were eating all kinds of healthy, organic, local food. We were processing it really well with our bodies. And we were creating this really nutrient-rich waste. Human waste is really nutrient-rich. We use cow waste and all kinds of other manures, in agriculture. And so we had this really nutrient-rich waste that we were using clean drinking water to flush down a pipe to the sewage treatment plant. And so we realized there was a huge disconnect. We were taking all this fertility and we were actually exporting it from our site, and it was becoming a really energy-intense, polluting issue. So we decided we could actually keep our waste home, capture it, and recycle it on site, and use it to actually nourish the forest garden, the fruit trees. So this is basically the bottom part of the batch composting system. So all the waste from that second-story bathroom that I showed you just comes down through this piece of road culvert, and then there's a fan that actually just is exhausting any odor, any moisture from the system out of the house. And then inside that box is this drum, just this pretty typical trash can on wheels. And that will hold, it will fill probably about 60% of the way after about 3 to 4 months. We're gonna compost this material really well. it will have been sitting for a couple of years, and we can take it out and actually use it. So we're spreading it around above the root system of the fruit tree, and then putting fresh mulch material on top. So the trees are happy.
I didn't know that. No more what to use.
Sneaky Atlantis. Who invited you to this party? Isn't it? Look at this. A few dreams on top of a building. Green roofs literally are a vegetated system that cover most, or if not all, of the surface area of a rooftop. We can integrate elements from the natural world into a developed space in a harmonious way to add not just beauty, but some functionality as well that you get in the natural world. You can bring that into a built space environment in a powerful way with green roofs. One of the great sort of unspoken catastrophes happening in this city and cities like this across the country, across the world, is the enormous problems caused by sewage systems. So in a city like New York, rainwater goes into a combined sewage system. So every time you use a toilet or wash your face or brush your teeth, that water goes into the same sewage system as this stormwater. This puts an enormous burden on the current infrastructure model for dealing with these kinds of environmental stakeholders. Large cities like New York City inject anywhere from 25 to 30 billion gallons of raw sewage into the surrounding bodies of water every single year. I mean, that's just an astounding number. And that is having a catastrophic effect on the ecologies that depend on those bodies of water that are near us. And it's having a catastrophic effect on us because we're intimately connected to and dependent on those ecosystems. So if you've got living systems like this covering the city, you have a massive capability of absorbing almost all the stormwater that falls over the city on top of buildings, which is one of the biggest contributors to combined sewage overflow. And I think one of the most important revolutions that's happened in the last 5 or 6 years is that green roofs have now become a center for food production. So you can get all these other sort of cascading benefits, but now you can imagine that you can grow food. And on a really good side, you can grow enough food for several different communities that are local to this area. So these are the beehives. One of the principles of permaculture is the idea that in a limited space, you can diversify the production that's happening in that space. And
And here you have sort of built-in pollinators for the food production and perennials that are planted on the other side of the green room. So you have this mutually supporting relationship. And of course, you get a little added bonus because you can route a little honey when the time is right. When I got involved with green rooms, I was working for a nonprofit that really, I had such a deep, I gained such a deep understanding of social justice working there. And one of the reasons that we were involved with creating green rooms is because the understanding was that this was a way of not just improving the environment, although that was our goal. Our goal was to improve our immediate environment there in South Bronx, but also look at a way of creating unique and appealing jobs, opportunities for people who are really often not part of that conversation. Really it's about supporting human activities in a way that enables us to also support these essential relationships that we depend on. Brings us back into that web of interdependence.
We've got over 120 million people in the Northeastern Corridor, which is over 1/3 of the United States population. Most of those people are living in urban epicenters. And what we're looking at as we tour around these sites in this landscape is ways to take the principles of permaculture and turn a problem into a solution. The dill here is a permaculture guild plant, in that this plant attracts in beneficial pollinators. These two plants together create a symbiotic relationship where the dill is attracting in the insect that will eat the things that would have made holes on this. And so you end up with better looking kale and some dill to make your pickles with. So one of the main things we're out here to look at is this rain tank up here. Part of what's so great about this rain tank is that you don't even know there's a rain tank here. In a landscape where we get 2 to 4 inches of rainfall every single month, we could be catching, holding, storing, and using that rainwater in our landscapes. This is one that we're looking at here that is a 1,000-gallon tank. The water for it is all coming from a church that is a large structure that's sitting next to the community garden. And the roof surface of that church sends all of its water into this 1,000-gallon tank. And so we see a great example of another permaculture approach, which is let's use biology to back up technology. And here the biology is all these vines that are trellised over the tank, prolong the life of the tank, increase the water quality by keeping light from getting into it. We'll see, I'll turn this one on so we can see the volume of water we're talking about. So when we catch it, hold it, and store it high, part of why this tank is so well placed is because it's at the highest point in the garden. So every place we go downhill, our water pressure will actually increase. For every foot of drop in elevation, you get 1 pound of PSI pressure in a water pipe. Tanks like this throughout the city and our community gardens are really an invaluable resource because this water flowing right now doesn't need any electricity from the grid, doesn't need any trucks, doesn't need any aqueducts from the Catskills. All it needs is to have this line from that tank be connected, and we've got gravity-fed, high-pressure, high-quality water. This would just be
turning into a storm sewer overflow event, and now here it is like becoming a part of how we can grow super high quality, nutritious food. And people will ask us, you know, will permaculture work? And what Bill Mollison said is, will plants grow?
This is both an educational place, but really, from the kids' point of view, it's more just a really pleasant place to hang out. And I think that's really beautiful, the idea that the garden is really part of the love. And so it's just integrated, like all of the fruit plants and the vegetables are now a normal part of life. It became much easier to teach garden design when I was using permaculture principles, because I wasn't designing something that they would think would be this disgusting amount of work that would turn them off to the whole project. Instead, we could design a playground where food is naturally growing throughout the playground. That's a healthy part of this garden. That's not taking away from the garden, that's adding to it. And the people sitting out front playing cards adds to it. And they're looking out over it and taking care of it. And that's all part of, to me, the permaculture idea, especially in the city.
This neighborhood is called Waterfront South, and here in Waterfront South, there's a lot of environmental issues because of our proximity to the river and the industry along the river. The stormwater and household wastewater treatment facility is like a block away, and they process all of the stormwater and household wastewater for Camden County. Historically, they've been really bad to the neighborhood, and this neighborhood is known for having a certain smell that Camden as a city doesn't have. And maybe so it wasn't like people wouldn't go play outside because of the smell. And so because of our closeness and proximity to the water treatment facility, we've come to realize that it's really important to find a way to recycle water and reuse water.
Camden's an older city. Like, it's been around for a while. It's had its ups and downs. Yeah, the way the sewage system works is everything's going, all the pipes connect to the same route. They're not separated in any way. When it rains, all the rainwater gets collected in that same area. So when it starts raining and it goes on for a couple hours, it starts to flood. The system actually overflows into the streets, and flooding is bad down here. So right here we have these inverts in the sidewalks because the streets have a sort of downward slope to them. But all the rainwater rushes down the streets, comes through these vents. Vents go straight across into the rain garden. They go across the rocks. It's almost like a natural filter. And they water these gardens. Before this happened, 3 years ago, it was an abandoned gas station. 3 years ago, an abandoned gas station, and now it's a rain garden. It's a big contrast. Well, after they had looked at the concrete and just dirt, we brought in soil. We started bringing in plants. We started taking plants from our native plant nursery. It went from being that run-down, abandoned gas station, really just dead, to turning into things flourish and turned into this. It's like really lively. I can hear crickets. There's something living in here. This is rainwater. This is that overflow. Right here, not too long ago, this was an abandoned factory, and it had got burned to the ground. And that's all that remained, that's all that's left standing was that tower. But definitely, if something were happening here, I'd love to see a rain garden put in. It's a massive lot. It's empty, it's already got life growing in it. Why not? I mean, it's already growing plants. Why can't we can make it function?
One human interaction. Talking, showing, sharing, and practicing the pathways, people and the planet are all connections, so that we get a connection of how ancestors and create all of that.
One of the most inspiring permaculture principles for me is the first one, this idea of observing and interacting. It slows me down, it allows me to understand the flow and the wisdom that exists in a landscape that I might have the opportunity to learn from and co-design with. And it's the same with people. I work with formerly incarcerated men. So when I can talk to them about permaculture principles and applying it in their life, they get it and they immediately apply it. Whether they have land or not, whether they have a window that they can plant seeds in, but they understand this permaculture lens starts with me, how I'm designing my life, and how I need mine and others' needs for sustenance. Naturally, that includes food, water, energy. So it's that integration and relationship building, because I don't want to assume that any person or group doesn't care about something. I want to create capacity for people's needs to be heard. How do we meet people where they're at? And that to me is the on-ramp. It's actually meeting people where they're at, acknowledging where they're at to be valid, and then co-designing this movement together.
I can give back now, you know, I mean, I have children that can actually learn from me. You know what I mean? How to build garden boxes and run lines and drip systems and so on and so forth. And what's the importance of having healthy food.
what we've been doing is we're planting 500 fruit trees, actually 494 to be exact. And we got cherries, we got apples, and we have pears.
So that idea of urban interacting is not just about the land that we're a part of, it's all of the different areas that we are trying to transform in our lives.
Permaculture is a lot more than simply applying a new set of techniques to nature that's viewed the same way as the past. You know, it's not just a bunch of techniques to better manipulate the substrate of matter. It comes from a different understanding of matter. So to make an economy ecological, we have to understand what is true of the rest of life. And that means understanding ourselves as a part of nature, not the lords and possessors of nature, as Descartes put it. And as technology seems to make us think, that better world will come where we finally complete our dominance over all natural processes, over all other beings, when we can control things at the genetic level, at the nano level. Then we'll have a perfect world. We're waking up from that because, for one thing, that technological program is falling apart, and our control over nature is kind of backfiring. So, an economy that's aligned with permaculture and that supports permaculture would be an economy in which, for example, the best business decision is the same as the best ecological decision.
Most of us know the saying, an apple a day will keep the doctor away. It's certainly not true today. What we have to understand is how our food is grown has big implications for how medicinal that food is for us. I do this thing in my workshops, and I ask, how many meat do you see right now? And usually people will laugh and joke and say, oh, I see 10 of you, or 2 of you, or 1 of you. And the right answer is, I am a community of 1 trillion. My skin is covered with bacteria, my respiratory tract, my digestive tract. And without all those allies, I would be in trouble. Well, similarly, out here in nature, there are all kinds of beneficial bacteria and beneficial fungi that cover the surface of plants. When we come in and spray fungicides, we're also depleting what's meant to be on the surface of the leaf. Really, the basic notion is, I have a symptom, and I'm going to do something to take care of that symptom by killing the organism causing the problem. On the other hand, a holistic spray is something that works with the system to build health. And that's where the true divide lies here. Is that spray allopathic, or is that spray holistic? Are we supporting the system? So there's several items that go into my holistic spray mix. And the biology portion is effective microbes. And the way to think about this, it's not unlike a probiotic culture, us going into the health food store and then buying something to replenish our gut flora. Well, effective microbes come to us out of the natural farming movement in Japan. And the microbes selected, the lactic acid bacteria, the photosynthetic bacteria, the different yeasts, are all competing organisms that I'm going to apply out to the surface of the plant. And this is something that I actually brew, so there's a way to bring it up to heat, to make these organisms multiply. And so when I'm out here spraying, it's because I'm kind of on the positive side. I'm looking for ways to enhance that nutrient uptake in the plant, enhance the coverage of the biology on the leaf and the fruit, because that's all part of how the plant resists disease. All these different plants that make up this really biodiverse scene here in my orchard play all sorts of different roles. Here you see Queen's Anne's lace. All these umbelliferous flowers attract all kinds of parasitic wasps. Those parasitic wasps, as adults, need the nectar to be here. They in turn go out and find the larva of the codling moth or the oriental fruit moth and put their egg inside that larva and destroy it. So they're part of my insect balancing plan. It's through biodiversity that we bring in all kinds of allies. I've always loved the idea of the permanent part of the word permaculture. This notion that we live in a place and we're committed to it just as much as it's committed to us. That through stewarding it, by creating biodiversity, we start to have part of what is the answer to a lot of our big issue problems that overwhelm us.
Riparian basically means along the water, and a riparian buffer means a more diverse ecology along our water's edge. Most of our farms, of course, are farming right to the edges of the rivers, and we see that being some of the most prone land. In the summer of 2011 here in Vermont, we were hit by Tropical Storm Irene, which did tremendous damage to our farms, to the point of some farms being literally washed away the underlying bedrock, essentially losing all of their topsoil because their land was in bare cultivation with no protection from the action of the river, from the action of flood getting over the banks and moving swiftly over their fields. What we see here is your standard pattern of riverbank erosion. So the goal here is to aggressively establish deep-rooted plants and root masses to better stabilize this. But yeah, you can see them in these ones, you know, they were planted like that, pretty obviously, but they're still rooted. And this spring has been, we've seen 2 floods this spring. We just had, you know, a 100-year flood, and these plants are holding on. You know, even as the banks crumble underneath them, unlike the grasses which tend to break off and wash away, they have deeper roots and they hold more soil. So the buffer isn't simply to absorb nutrients running off the farm. The buffer is also to protect it from wind. The buffer is also to shade the stream. The buffer is also to prevent erosion. The buffer is also to provide food. The buffer is also to provide medicine. The buffer is also to provide habitat. So I've lost track, right? But when we talk about stacking functions, we see that we're getting multiple yields from this one kind of endeavor.
most of human history, most humans in most places in the world have been getting their food from forests. Very traditional, it's probably been done for thousands of years in Asia. And it's very different from most mushroom production, which is done indoors on blocks of sawdust, where you're controlling the temperature and humidity and constantly putting energy inputs into the system. Here we're out in the woods, and the woods provide all the right context for these to grow and flourish. It's a little variable. This week's a little wet, so they're a little bit different, but by and large, the logs are going to respond to the conditions of the forest, which is, where they come from. And I like to believe where they want to be. Kind of nice out here, and it's fresh air. I worked at a nature center. We were extending our sugar bush for maple syrup, and had all these small diameter logs like this one. That we had enough fire, we were like, there's gotta be something else we can do with these. So we learned some guy up the road was growing shiitakes, on logs. We said, let's have it for our class. We did it. It was kind of weird. We plug a bunch of things in a log and they're sitting there and they're like, anything's happening. And a year later, of course, first flush, and I was pretty hooked. Just the beauty of them and the nutritional value and just the flavor. And then we're decomposing this log, right? So if you just drop the tree, it would decompose anyway. We might as well decompose it with something that's edible. And then it eventually goes back into the forest soil. So we're plugged in a really nice way to this whole forest system that's going to happen anyway. The trees are going to fall over, die, decompose. But we're inserting this piece where we're getting this really high value, high sustenance food product in the meantime. You can have that win-win scenario where the forest benefits, we benefit, and we engage in the cycle, right? We're just a facilitator of decomposition. The mushrooms are doing most of the work really in the end.
There's a slug. Gotta get the ducks back in here. So that's our biggest predator, so to speak.
For permaculture, Bill Wilson was known for saying, you don't have a slug problem, you have a duck deficiency, so there's something missing from an ecosystem which gets it out of balance, and the slugs in the mushroom yard is the system a little bit out of balance. The eggs are a byproduct or a surplus of their activity as pest control agents on the farm. So their main job here is to root around and dig out slugs and bugs and fertilize. And the eggs are just helping as a surplus of that activity as a product for us to sell. What this is about is whatever species you're working with, plant or animal, how does it want to thrive, and how can you create the conditions for that? Because then it just goes crazy. If you give it the right conditions, it just explodes with health. The principle that Mollison said is everything burns. We're just a piece in the whole ecosystem. And that's a big shift from what I've seen of industrial agriculture, which is that we command the ecosystem. We tell it what to do and it obeys us. What we're talking about here is that I'm just a part of it, but the birds in this forest, the trees in this forest, the rodents, the slugs, the ducks, are all playing their role, and we're just orchestrating those relationships and trying to shift little pieces, at a time, and let it exist as its own ecosystem, and see ourselves as just a 1/10 of that ecosystem, or 1/100th, rather than it's all about us. It's really ego driven, and I think that's the shift of permaculture from agriculture is how we place in it rather than imposing on top of it.
If you look at the natural world, you know, if you look at you know, a forest or jungle or savanna or grassland, what is the primary energy input? You know, it's the sun. And there's water and there's wind. You know, those are the inputs. And then somehow, through those energy inputs, it's able to create this, you know, this amazing infrastructure. You know, so you get, you know, wood, leaves, and you know, you got, you know, all the biology that's connected to it. You know, all of these amazing form livelihoods that come from that process, that photosynthesis, that autotrophic process. You know, being able to take the energy, the nutrients that are in the atmosphere, the light that comes from the sun, and then convert that into matter. That's incredible. Like technologically, that is amazing. And we don't have anything to come anywhere near. So why would you not leverage that technology to form the basis upon which the systems that you rely upon to live? Like, why not leverage that technology? Why not leverage that infrastructure? And in doing so, realize that your ability to exist is predicated on its ability to exist. And that if you undermine it, you undermine yourself.
When you get into grain crops like we're doing on a scale of an acre here, the dry beans and pintos, black turtle beans, and the other beans like the whippoorwill peas and the cowpeas that you tried, the oats and the wheat, you know, it's very difficult for people to get their head around how to do that without tractors and combines and tillage. Masanobu Fukuoka was a Japanese rice farmer that wrote 2 books that are important to people in the permaculture movement, and both of them were helpful to me, The Natural Way of Farming and One Straw Revolution. The biggest thing was he didn't till the soil. So he talked about planting the next crop into that crop that was growing when it's about time to harvest so that it takes over and you don't have weeds really are trying to cover the soil. So if you do that job for them, then you don't have that cycle of weeds. So if you plant the crop, in the next crop into the crop, and that really was very helpful for me because I couldn't believe that beans would just germinate when sown. Everything told me, but you have to drill it and they have to be very important mention. To see that it works with mulch and that you just size your mulch in place and the beans come through it. After we harvest the dry beans out of the field, then the chickens go in there and clean up. The way animals are treated in the industrial system is basically it's a one-way loop. We're not closing the loop. Animals are mistreated, but we're also losing many resources that they provide in a holistic system. And when they're treated well, they give back. The ducks are great in going around and getting insects and eating and foraging, and they're largely self-sufficient. The Three Sisters is a great example of polyculture. The roles of the three crops growing together, they help each other out. The beans being a nitrogen fixer, fix nitrogen, extra nitrogen for the soil, which is taken up by the other crops. The squash and the pumpkins cover the soil. You can see how they're doing it in the cornfield. You just work with the field as a diverse polyculture, and all three crops help each other out. One of the things that many farmers try to get maybe 4 to 5% organic matter, for example, in the soil, and the soil tests have come back like 18% organic matter here. In fact, often they say it's compost because of the way we build this soil up here. And that's something that organic farmers are always fighting. They're always trying to find ways to get organic matter and nutrients into the soil, but still feeling the need to till. So that transformation from tillage is the biggest obstacle. It's the obstacle of scale, and it's a social obstacle as well, because it's looking at the farm in a very different way.
Every culture that has based its staple food crops diet on staple foods, like carbohydrates, proteins, and oils. Every culture that's based its staple food crops diet on annual plants has collapsed. Now, annual plants are planted. The seed goes in the ground, grows 1 year, puts out a prodigious amount of seed, and then dies. If you're growing annual plants, you have to destroy the ecosystem that's there to expose the soil. So you go and you eradicate that ecosystem, now you plant your annual crops. Now your soil is exposed to the wind and the rain, and it does wash away, it goes down into the streams. There's no life there anymore, it's gone. Life is, it's devoid of life, it might as well be on Mars. That's why we need permaculture. We need a permanent agriculture. We need an agriculture that actually restores ecosystem services instead of an agriculture that goes in and degrades a resource base, wipes it out, and washes it all out to sea. What would plants that naturally occur here and belong here? And let's create a system that imitates the form of that ecosystem and its ecosystem functions. you look at what is your, you know, your region, your biome, what was the vegetation like here, you know, 300 years ago, 150 years ago, 6,000 years ago, you know, what was the range of species that grew in your area? Then start to imitate that, say, okay, pick out the ones that have economic potential. Pick out tall trees, medium trees, short trees, shrubs, cane fruits, vines that are specific for your region, and every region is different. The model I do the most work with is the most widespread in North America, the oak savanna. It ranges all across North America. Where we found oak savanna, in order of height, you find the Fagaceae, which are oak, chestnut, or beech. They all produce large nuts. Apples, malice, prior to Europeans, they were little prairie grass. The dominant shrub in oak savanna was hazelnut. Then there were raspberries and blackberries kind of crawling out. Then there were vines climbing all over the whole mess. Grapes was the most widespread further south. You have passion fruit. Who eats the grass? The oak savannas were teeming with wildlife. The Pleistocene megafauna with like the mastodons, woolly mammoth, Columbian mammoth. This was the most productive, you know, photosynthetically, biologically productive savanna on the planet. So productive that some of the soils south of Chicago are like 200 feet deep of the most rich black dark topsoil I've ever seen. That rich dark topsoil was created by all those plants that I just mentioned and all of those grazing animals tearing trees down, eating grass, leaves, bushes, vines, pooping, peeing, reproducing, killing each other for millennia. That's how the soil was created after the glaciers pulled back. It was created by this type of biology right here. When we look at that system, that's what's here. The oak savanna was here. Let's plant those different families with selected plants that we've done breeding work on to have improved yields, improved disease resistance, pest resistance. And let's use the animals to do the weed control and the fertility management and a lot of the pest control. So the animals are driving the system, just like in nature, and we're harvesting all the yields that come off of the various different perennial woody crops. One of the things, because this is so far north, when you get a week of 20-degree weather, the birds will freeze shut and the nut gets ruined. And so when I'm saving for seed, I want the earliest ripening ones. Now there's a bunch. Now, the classic perennial crop staple foods are nuts. We've got chestnut trees here. There are chestnut trees that are over 4,000 years old. There's one on the eastern flank of Mount Etna growing out of a solid rock. It still sets the record of having the largest diameter trunk of any tree on the planet. You know, beats redwoods and everything. It's that big and that old. 4,000 years it's been producing a grain equivalent with no inputs. Anything that you use an annual grain for, your breads, pastas, use it like a potato in soups and stews. We know that nature functions with no inputs. It doesn't take any fertilizer from, you know, some factory somewhere else. It doesn't need natural gas to make pesticides and herbicides and fungicides. I've actually touched hazelnut trees that were planted by the Romans. They're still there, still producing hazelnuts. What, 300 AD? So it's like 16, 17, 1800 years later, still producing hazelnuts. These are some of the oldest chestnuts. We did this alley cropping. We were growing zucchini between. There's 5 rows of zucchini. As the trees got bigger, we moved into 3 rows of zucchini, and we went down to 1 row of zucchini. Doing 1 row of zucchini was a waste of time. And so then you observe the rest of the system and see weeds coming in. The weeds that were coming in were mulberry, raspberry, elderberry, grapes. And so then we planted them right down the middle of the rows. This was a corn farm. I also worked with farmers to do exactly that transition.
Where we're entering into now, on our transition, we've already gone from, you know, cornfields to this diverse system. Now we're getting to the point where things are closing in, the canopy's closing in, and our grass component is disappearing. And so now we're starting to manage with a chainsaw. So we're now removing trees. Now we're going to have to remove trees always and forever. Think about that. Our management system now demands that we cut trees down. Crap. We have to make boards, firewood, mushrooms, toilet paper, all that kind of stuff. We have to harvest this wood or else we get decreasing yields. I figured. What are you doing? Want a belly rubs? Belly rubs? Good girl. Good girl. It's my funny. Everybody has looked in their rearview mirror before and seen a police car. And what happens to you? Instantly, your whole entire body chemistry changes. And I want that too. Your whole body chemistry changes. You are a radically different physical organism. So if you have animals that live like this, and they experience, you know, love and joy and pats, you know, they're not being like chased by a police car. And what we do, we're going to start doing it right now, is we feed them on the trailer towards the end, in the morning, give them their snacks. So they're used to loading on the trailer. They don't have any squeeze chutes, any of that. You just call them, they run up on the trailer, and they shut the door, and you have one bad day. Oh, hi, how are you? How are you? The animals that we have, they are savanna species. It just so happens that the ones that we have right here aren't the North American variations of the savanna species. So we have cattle and hogs and sheep and chickens and turkeys and ducks and guineas. And then some of the animals eat the grasses, some eat the broadleaves, some eat thorny stuff, some eat brush, and then turkeys are mostly insect eaters, and chickens are mostly seed eaters. And so the chickens are going around eating weed seeds and some bugs and caterpillars and stuff. They all eat different parts of the ecosystem. And the tree crops, that's what we reserve to us. And if you were just looking for a vegetarian diet between hazelnuts and chestnuts, that's a complete protein. Let's go look at the corn. Corn has its place, but it's definitely not over like 60% of the continent. But yeah, look at that. Even in its prime, there wasn't any more than 8 feet of photosynthesis going on there. It may produce however million calories per acre, but it's not an ecosystem. There's no wildlife out there. Their water actually runs off onto our farm, and we collect it and store it, and we use it here. Look how brown that cornfield is. Look how green the trees are. And it was actually some students at University of Illinois last year, they did the analysis. And even if we are getting, if you look at all the yields of the different crops, from hazelnut to chestnut, grapes, raspberries, currants, and livestock gains, pasture, forage, even if we go out the low end of the range, of all the crops we grow, we are outproducing corn by about 30% total human calories per acre. I am a proponent of doing things to a real scale, and if we are going to be creating permanent agriculture, that means growing food for people. It doesn't mean planting a nut tree in your front yard. That means hundreds and hundreds of thousands of millions of acres of food productivity. Where there's, I think it's like over 100 million acres of corn that's out there this year. We need hundreds of millions of acres of food-producing savannas and forests and all the different vegetation types. Hundreds of millions of acres. So let's have a mechanized ecological paradise. We walk away from this place right here, it'll still be producing crops for the next couple thousand years.
You know, the word designer is very misleading. Designer sounds like, oh, we know what we're doing all the time, right? We know exactly what we're doing. We're the designer. No, we're just facilitators, right? We're just assemblers. We're orchestrators. You know, but we can't play all of the instruments. We can make sure they're on the stage, and hopefully they play their instruments well. But the symphony that comes out of that, that's the magic. We just can assemble the components and have faith in that the symphony will come forward. And it does. That's the crazy thing, is it does come forward. You put the pieces of the puzzle together in beneficial interrelationship. This is just all that permaculture is. And the symphony starts to play. We don't have to know how to do it all, because we don't. We will never know how to do it all. All we have to do is start assembling the pieces.
Interesting, yeah.
Any impressions, comments?
Very good, right? And I've loved it.
So I think the past year we've been always showing really depressing movies on how polluted the world is, how bad everything is. But this one is just a good start to the year, I think, on solutions and different ways of looking at things. So what I would like from the audience is comments and impressions, and maybe most importantly, any projects that you know in Malaysia, any experiments that you're carrying out, or working with friends to sort of build something like a self-flourishing garden, edible balcony project or something like that.
I experimented with growing stuff in my balcony. Didn't go so well. I looked up online to see how you can grow stuff in this climate. Didn't get much luck. So that was kind of unfortunate.
It's kind of funny because we are tropical and we're supposed to be able to...
Things are growing its own.
Yeah, exactly.
Apparently it's not that way. I asked some of my friends who have attempted to grow things at home, and they told me they would like plant tomatoes and such. It would get time to grow, but it would never fruit, would never get to fruition. That's my experience.
Right. Anyone else?
The amateur group in Makiza can think about it is having an edible garden. I don't even know what it is now, so it's going on.
Yeah, that's
I've not visited it, but so how is it? Sorry?
No, I'm not involved there. Something that did not the second last one is camp. We were from Bingo. That just reminded me just a few days ago I saw something on National Geographic was on one. Congratulations was one. And it was about this Australian biologist trying to preserve ancient seeds. And this guy went all over the world, like to Tajikistan or somewhere, and they're trying to find the hardiest seeds from ancient society that were adapted to the environment and all that. And then with the empowering the seeds, meaning we have genetically engineered increase yield, etc. They're actually then they need all chemicals, etc. But then also after 2 or 3 generations of these super
there's finding that they are falling prey to disease or that. So the priority for not just Malaysia is to get a seed bank and to preserve it and to hold on to it as our right against CPPA and Monsanto, etc. Before they get here. How are we going to do this here, particularly in Malaysia? I mean, these guys in Australia, they're doing it, and they're actually sending seeds to be placed somewhere in Iceland or somewhere that's placed beneath permacroft. So permacroft.
Iceland.
And they have a universal world seed bank.
It was borrowed from India actually.
Is it?
Yeah, it was first actually initiated in India, called seed banks, where initially there was actually more than 150,000 kinds of seeds, millets, oil seeds, and then it's not just because of adapting to the environment, but also because of adaptability of the soil. That the soil destroys the seeds. So this idea that seeds, even if you do not GMO it actually still engineers itself is a very flawed idea. So it came from Asia though. It's a very Asianic idea of preserving seeds. I think that's my critique of the film. I think I feel very uneasy that it's like suddenly this idea of permaculture that Anglo-Saxon people seems to be saying, but this has been something that has been practiced for years from the community where I grew. It's basically the subsistence economy of my grandmothers, our grandmothers, how my grandmother would plant a variety of foods. I think the problem is the film is not, the problem with permaculture movement, I'm definitely for permaculture, polyculture, but I think this hipster permaculture movement that is taking place is not critical, the ideological unity within this movement is not present. It is not posing itself as a critique or an audible alternative to the mainstream culture of centralizing production, mass centralization of food distribution, which is causing huge waste, which we can't. The problem is we need to talk about mass centralization of food. If we talk about that, you see the film is mostly middle class, suburban neighborhood people. The problem with permaculture, it needs to address workers' control. Like a lot of people aren't able to do this because they work 15 hours a day. We need to talk about work, labor, production. We need to talk about trade systems. For instance, in India, this debate of population, and I feel a lot of permaculture is using the debate of population. It's not so much about population, it's that United States of America consumes 45% of the world's food. Corn is produced in mass scale, but only 35% of corn is actually even consumed. Most of it goes to animals. So it's not so much about population, but it's so much about to do with who is consuming what. So how do we, as a permaculture movement, give a TPPA, for instance, where the permaculture is? For instance, GMO. We are going to see Monsanto. We are going to see Carnival. For instance, if you see, it's already taking place in Ukraine. The corporate takeover of Ukrainian agriculture. So bear in mind, even decolonization, it was the colonizers, the corporate colonizers, who very much wanted to outsource India's production output. India had very high production output, but its consumption was low. This is because through free trade agreements, food consumption is usually the idea of producing to be exported. To an extent, I just finishing my point, to an extent that I feel food security and food sovereignty has not become at all an issue in Malaysia. We spend 11 billion US dollars each year to import food to this country. Philippines was a country that exported rice, today is a country that imports rice. Malaysia has to talk about food security. We are destroying farmers in Trono. We already have GMO in Malaysia, where a lot of Malaysian farmers sees the rice maize in Kedah from being like this is how the rice maize used to be, but the rice maize is like this now. So when the wind blows, the seed drops, and you get lesser yield and lesser consumption. So you have this Indian woman lady who is actually given the best scientist award in the world. So I was like kind of thinking back, oh, it's a woman, she's from my ethnic community. but she's actually GMOing food and she's justifying it. You know, it's like, these are the people who have disconnect to the land, have disconnect to how. So I think maybe we need to talk about this, the critique towards the establishment. Whether we saw that in the film, whether we're seeing the permaculture movement, because we have a vibrant permaculture movement in Malaysia. So whether are these groups just a middle class, just want to adapt within the system, or giving a critique?
So, anyone want to respond to that?
Well, I mean, it's just this surrender to the colonial culture. We're still, in Asia and other places like this, we're still sort of worshipping colonialists. And we're still, everybody is under the thumb of this idea that these people are better than us and they know more about it and everything. And so everybody just passively sort of surrenders. And this TPPA is the ultimate passive surrender to the colonial rulers, who in this case was like Monsanto, the whole American sort of corporate kind of civilization. So I mean, it's very it's really hard to change because I mean we're not doing anything. I mean I'm talking about say Malaysia or other Asian countries, they're not doing anything to oppose this. They don't know how to do that. It's, the colonial thing that's been going on for several generations, and everybody's sort of their mindset is just sort of these people know better than us, and they're doing it, and therefore we have to fall in with all their plans and everything like that.
Right. I completely agree with you. I think the argument of trade and agriculture, thanks to ISIS for coming up with the cost and benefit report, which was so ridiculous, but I think the problem is so much that the argument of being isolated. So you see, we're talking about agriculture and PPA. It's a segment that India was a country that imported cottons. Exported cottons. Now it's a country that imports cottons. Philippines was a country that exported rice, imports rice.
That's what happened.
The idea of actually
that's what happened.
exactly.
Jamaica and all these countries in the Americans.
And in the process of centralizing production, you see how 65% of Africa's soil can't be used today. That is very dangerous. But putting agriculture in the market, the idea of market-driven growth, market-driven expanding economies, we are not seeing this from anyone in Malaysia coming out and critique, because both the opposition and the government believe in a very market-driven economy. And I believe a lot of the people there believe in market-driven. How do you even commodify food? He's selling food. The idea of selling food, commodifying food, is very anti-grandmothers of ours. The idea of food to nourish or food to sell. We need to, I think, challenge all these fundamentals through an economic angle.
So, what about when you guys came to watch the film, you came with certain preconceptions, certain ideas. Why were you interested to come, and did that address your what you wanted to see? Anyone? Would you like to start a farm? Would you like to start a farm? And what sort of farm?
I mean, basically, I accidentally bought a piece of land in Langkawi and helping a friend and everything. I don't know what to do with it, and exposed myself to a bit of culture ideas, and I thought that's a good way to retire. So I just want to get some ideas, and I was impressed with the work that you implement that. I mean, you may not change the world, but at least I can change my lifestyle.
So, how far are you into designing it? That's what you were doing, or?
I'm learning, reading more, meeting people, the circle, yeah, just trying to learn more and share more with them.
Is there quite a big movement that you find a lot of people to talk to? Is it a big issue in Malaysia?
They are, because I learn habits of people. In fact, the gentleman who just left just now, you him that was quite nice.
get it I know, the Northeast I know, in Malaysia, to these people who live on that coast, is sector. Yeah. I mean, they're doing this kind of thing, aren't they?
Takes away the land.
Yeah.
Access to land, you know, like I think she said just now, it's, if I can't change society, let me at least change myself. I heard more eyes than E's in the film. The problem is, you can't even have an eye properly if you're looking at GMO seeds. Your seeds are genetically modified crops. So this argument that GMOs can expand the yield so we can save the whole population of the world, it is not even liable because you're still practicing monoculture. And I think one more problem that I find with permaculture is let's not insult indigenous people, the peoples in these countries and the regions who have been practicing permaculture by not calling it permaculture. You know, today we are so it's more about the post-coloniality of the politics of knowledge. How do we respect knowledge and not view it as just something that, oh, we came up today, but it's something that was, you know, just driven down from generations before. I think that the evidence of knowledge that Anglo-Saxon people have long produced, which has destroyed the world, is very present in the permaculture mindset today. Evidence of possessing knowledge is a mind thing, you know, like the guy said, you know, this is the best banana in the world. Like, I'm so sorry, I can't stop with this like Anglo-Saxon like that.
I think there's also a great disconnect between their ancestral producers and them. That, you know, they then think that it's a new thing, but it's actually not. But it's good that someone's trying to revive it, or restart some sort of, call it some other name. You know, it's a new thing, whatever, but I guess it's still putting in some alternative ideas into agriculture.
That's what we're saying. It's an old thing. It's what was there before.
Yeah, exactly.
Before this concrete stuff.
But in those days, several centuries ago, population didn't grow so exponentially that the world needed to improve yield. I mean, we went by the natural yield and started the natural repayment.
And we still can do.
Yeah, but because the population has grown so exponentially, and consumption, then the world is almost like taking the responsibility to increase the yield, whatever cost. Right?
America consumes 45% of the world's yield crops, and the rest of the world have to fight for so little. We go to bed with so little. Believe me, this argument of overpopulation is a very elite establishment idea. It's not about population, I think, that much. It's consumption.
But you have to see it in you know, it's definitely population. I mean, it's definitely population.
Votes, population means votes, right? So we want to vote, so we must make them
More expensive.
Yeah. Anyone else have what they see what they have to say? Like for instance, what do you think about
I get to see this from South Africa actually. They are practicing there. The problem when I come back, I couldn't find seedlings. Seedling is the first source, I think, because they buy it for a few cents, and then they can just bring it back to their garden and they can plant it. If you use seeds, it's gonna be tough. You see, you have to start from somewhere. But seedlings, I saw them, you just put it there. The next month they can actually harvest and eat spinach or something like that. So we couldn't find seedlings here. I couldn't find seedlings here. Yeah, then I just didn't.
I think SETDEM, as was mentioned, they do sell seedlings.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah. Organic.
They have big gatherings like every month or something.
Yeah, so they actually have a community center. If you would Google it, Organic Farming Community Center, SETDEM, CEPPM. You can actually go visit their little corner and you can find seedlings there. Maybe it's not very, huge variety because it's like a corner lot, but maybe it would
somewhere to start.
Yeah, somewhere to start.
Yeah, I think that is the the first step, because if everybody doing their role, I think it will reduce quite drastically. So if everyone is actually taking a part and plan behind that, because it's a big movement there as well. I think it's a trend. Then the small middle class families, they are practicing it, especially in South Africa. The gap is very big, right? So the middle and the lower guys, they are practicing that. The other guys, the other side, they are not bothered actually.
You mean the upper class?
Yeah, the upper class, they are not bothered. Yeah, usually it's like this.
And you guys?
To me, the main thing of what a creator is to teach people and spread what is supposed to be. So it was really agriculture, right? So the more it shows, it didn't care where it comes from. If it's from the next city, it doesn't care if it comes from Asia or America or anywhere else in Europe, as long as it's there, it's spreading the word, it's teaching people on Burma culture. So that's the main thing.
Can I just say why do I say it's important? Because I think knowledge, you see, a permaculture course in Malaysia costs 2,000 ringgit, the minimum fees. Okay, you can learn it from the internet. But to talk about knowledge and the things that we should be knowing is being vanguarded in a way that it is not being, knowledge is not distributed. Knowledge is so vanguarded within the few up there, for the few up there. How do we trickle down knowledge? How do we break away with this effect? I think that is very much what it is permaculture. So we need to talk about the knowledge of permaculture, the sources of it, the things, the spiritual aspect of it. I think that is why I keep on arguing about knowledge and permaculture is so central. Also about ceilings. How many ceilings are you going to like how many rooftops are you going to have actually? Like, I find that permaculture has also become this movement of just adapting into the very rapidly industrializing. It's okay to adapt, it's important to adapt, but are we just going to adapt? Are we going to possess as a solid alternative? How many people can have access to land? How many people can have access to rooftops? That those are not actors. Like redistribution of land is so important. Farmers are dying. We numbered 270,000 in India alone last year, farmers' suicide, because of indebtedness. But the point is, what is the difference between permaculture and organic farming? I think this is one more thing that we never spoke about. Organic farming is still very much dependent on monoculture. With monoculture, one crop for the source of the setting. Permaculture says that the variety of lives on one land actually interlinks and soil of the health. So there's also a difference between permaculture and I think organic farming. So,
yeah, well, I think they're all connected. One direction and another. Simulation of knowledge. All the films that we've seen from NASA, people 1.5 years at MESYM every month, so twice a month. All these films were shown on prime time on Astro and Arcanet every day of the year, and all the children were seeing this instead of all those things about wanting to be pop star, wanting to be maybe some more of them would want to be farmers and want to be, contributing.
I come from a working class family. My mom works 15 hours a day. She has no time to watch movies, she has no time to farm. But she's a landscaper herself.
Actually, I have a small farm. In Asia. Away from Kuching. I do rubber. I have a regular start by actually chicken production. She did the production by farm. You can figure that you will tie a dog farm. If you do get a tie dog farm, dog farm. Yeah, because our focus is on the actually halal production. And yeah, you can find that. Sorry. I get dog. DAD is my name.
Wait, is it related to the former chief minister?
Sorry. Okay, besides that, I have a small knowledge about movie. I'm doing my doctorate in university science relations. And so commenting about the movie, this movie I can take as a participatory observational documentary, which they're trying to address everything about the selective people in US. They had a theory about the urban economy, and just it shows a small part of their life with a beautiful scenery and small actually quotation from them, which is a farm is the brain function. And also we have to know farmer will actually survive. They have to do mass production. With a small scale, you are actually and what the other issue is you guys talked about now farming going to be national in Malaysia. It's just enough you go to the company and see all the youth engaged in the computer. It's hardly you can find it. And about another thing which nature now is facing about sanitation. If you come from area, you can see they have a heavy metallurgy and all the junk, very price junk, can to the oil farm, actually the farm, which is run by the people. And unfortunately, local people, the company people, unconsciously, the little they know, that it was good, because unfortunately, their weather, their water, and the environment gets affected if the one or plantation. Because some of them, even their water is poisoned, because for the habitat production of the environment, oil farm, they have to add a lot of fertilizer, and when the rain comes, this fertilizer will actually contaminate the underground water, and later the company will use that water as drink water. That's why if you actually refer to conduct study, you can understand even if it's coming to spatial economy, but no one did that study yet. What study, sorry? A study, actually, if you write, no one did that study, conduct that study. For example, to refer to the hospital and compare the diseases, for example, between 2000 to 2010 and before 2000. And I'm sure you can find it too. Yeah, something new. And I appreciate for actually showing this movie with you motivation to start the artists and open up new issues.
Can I just say two last things now, I think you brought up the point about palm oil. It's very important to follow palm oil politics in Malaysia. I think very little people do. And particularly the journalists. Palm oil is actually really dying because of the very volatile commodity prices. But what the government is actually doing, they are planning to actually reinsert the dominance of palm oil to make it into a biofuel industry. Germany has already warned, being one of the leading automobile countries, that it's going to actually destroy cars and make cars more expensive for fixing. But the government wants to have palm oil still. So I think it's also a lot about industrial cropping. And also, you can't just blame Malaysia, because Malaysia has long been made as a developing country to face this kind of turmoil. How World Bank, IMF have given loans, the liberalization of markets, food markets, exporting palm oils to expand our economy. Today we are seeing the fruit of it. So we need to like type. And last thing is about TPPA. It's very important to know that within TPPA, one of the very important things is that corporations have the right not to label their food. That is a very important thing. So food labeling becomes, so they won't even label GMO foods. You don't know like how secret recipe reserves the right not to have, you know, the ingredients all put in. So you're going to see this expanded. You know, the argument is to protect their whatever they don't want to know. It's very dangerous. I think we need to know that I don't think people have even read the TPPA intellectual property. And also another thing is about seed property rights. We have only talked about MESYM property rights. We're going to see how groups are going to come and acquire seed properties in this country. Durian Musang is already contested in World Trade Organization. Like, come on, Durian Musang as a plant. So, are we going to have corporate fascism? That's the question. Permaculture was meant to be, I think, permanently about decentralizing people growing their food so they do not depend on a structure to eat its food. So I don't think, of course the farmer will find it hard, but then the farmer feeds himself. His main thing is not to feed the market or to feed the United States or to feed Malaysia. It's about decentralizing. That's the idea of permaculture.
About the whole passion farm.
I know.
The farming actually is different because
and it is different, it's industrialized, and it's very harmful to I think the environment. Industrialization of agriculture. The monoculture, you see, agriculture is very synonym to monoculture because when you practice mass production of things, it's usually you produce one thing and you put it on the soil again and again, and the health of the soil destroys.
Sometimes nature forces you to be monoculture because a lot of crops you cannot
seriously believe that.
Yeah. A lot of crops you cannot grow in Malaysia because the Malaysia soil, if you know about the soil management, Malaysia soil is not capital for lots of crops.
According to which study is this?
You just Google soil management and study about the peat soil. Malaysia soil is a peat soil. In the peat soil, you cannot grow lots of actually different type of crops. I did a study and later I showed you the work. Why you cannot do apple here? Why you cannot do variety? Why you cannot do wheat here? Because actually the type of the soil.
Well, it's just the climate as well, isn't it?
But climate actually sometimes you can verify the seeds. They can be more protected with climate. But the soil is very important. Soil is much important than plant. But the soil is wrong. The soil is a peat soil, and the peat soil is not easy for some variety of crops.
Malaysia has lost basically 1,100 species of plants. We used to have 1,100 plus more kind of plants, which has completely mutated from time to time because of the arability of the soil. It's not that Malaysia's soil today is not good. Of course, today is not good because of the very industrial monoculture of palm oil. But it's also to study what arability of the soil was before and what it has become today. And not to, I think, generalize because the soil has always been like that. It is so much got to do with what it has become, I feel. And it's because of farms, industrializations who are primary aims to make money or food.
Malaysia is supposed to be a top 17 countries of biodiversity as well. So I suppose this one.
And we're also one of the biggest countries of biotechnologies which is emerging in the market. Biotechnologies.
Okay. Alright, so today, we had to go into the video. So thanks for coming. So for anything up with new, we do this once a month, second Tuesday of each month. So next month, I don't know what thing we're going to have. Maybe.
We might show a film on sugar. And
Yeah, maybe we'll have a film on health.
You can also suggest to the organizers to film films, right? Invite you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Alright. I'll suggest.
So yes, please check the website that we use, TPP the Lake, okay? Participate. Nicole, since you are so passionate, please participate on the website that we launched, tppthelake.org.
I don't put my name. So you know, I'm actually already participating. It's just not my name.
Alright, good. Yes, hope to see you next month. Thanks very much for coming.
Thank you.